Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, September 20th, close to the autumnal equinox. I'm pleased to welcome back my colleagues, Nick Welsh of the Santa Barbara Independent, Josh Molina of Newshawk, and the popular Santa Barbara Talks podcast. And for a special Hacks and Flacks edition, we're also delighted to welcome in Goleta Councilman James Kyriaco. James, loyal viewers of this show know that I rarely leave my house, let alone the 93105. But because I've recently leased a Honda, I've had occasion to go to Goleta multiple times. Plus, Josh sucked me into having coffee over there recently. And I have to say, I have driven in nightmare traffic in many of the great cities of the world, but never have I seen such a crammed dystopian traffic hellhole as now exists in Old Town Goleta. I've mentioned this a few times previously. I understand that you are singularly responsible for this mess. Councilman, how do you respond?
Well, first of all, great to be here, Jerry. And I'm glad that you were able to get out of the great cities of the world and come on down to the good land. I think of Goleta as being a small city with big dreams, and so many of those big dreams start in Old Town Goleta. That's where so many small businesses have started. You think about the Hamburger Habit, which is now the Habit, that started in Old Town Goleta. Before Goleta even was a city. Goleta's a special place. Old Town's a special place. It's definitely experiencing some challenges right now. And, I can appreciate people like yourself that only drive through Old Town every once in a blue moon or stop there from time to time.
Challenges.
Are going to face some challenges because there's going to see some changes. And,
you're working for the Pentagon next, I think. So
exactly.
I know, James, that you have a background with no traffic in it whatsoever. But on a more serious note, why are things? Because I've heard this from actual citizens.
Have you actually driven there, Jerry, or are you just saying that?
What's that?
Have you actually driven in Old Town?
Not only have I driven there, I have watched Josh try to park on the street there, which is really
that has more to do with Josh's parking abilities than the street.
You haven't been there. James asked you to go.
I've been there in my car. I've driven there in my car.
All right. James, why is it so challenging right now? What are the
city's trying? I mean, it's as challenging as it is because A, people don't really like change. But B, the city's trying to accomplish a lot of different things essentially at the same time in order to reduce construction fatigue and also save money. The city is trying to do a lot of different projects. We're trying to replace a bridge. That's going to allow most of Old Town Goleta to be out of the floodplain, take them out of the 100-year floodplain. That will take a lot of businesses that currently have to pay for flood insurance out of a situation where they have to do that. But from a fundamental level, you have to replace the bridge because it's deteriorating. It was built with a material called reactive aggregate. It was built in the mid-60s and it needs to be replaced. And so you're looking at major construction caused by something like 100-foot crane, putting down large concrete pilings, and you have to basically.
Do you think it would have been better to hold off on the parking plan and get this bridge done first? But having the two of them together just does infuriate. I mean, I have people going, "Oh, this is a plot by Goleta to increase sales taxes because people will not be able to get out of there and they'll have to spend money." Anyway, I get all of these all of the people who are really upset about this. Do you think that you could have timed it better?
Well, I can say a few things about that. The first thing I'll say about that is the project was supposed to be, there's multiple projects here. If you're talking specifically about the striping and why was the striping done when all these other projects are happening, I think that's the gist of your question.
That is precisely that.
Well, there we go. So there's a few reasons for it. One is you're going to have a whole bunch of congestion no matter what. You're going to have a whole bunch of folks stuck in traffic no matter what.
Because of the
You
bridge,
can't
James?
replace a bridge and build 2 roundabouts at the same time and build an east-west route at the same time and not have traffic congestion. And so what I would ask people that ask that very fair question, it's a very logical question. I've heard it from friends and neighbors and people in the community many times. What I'd say to them is, if you're going to have to go through all of that at the end of the day, do you want to be a bicycle that's trying to navigate 2 lanes of traffic in each direction during those kinds of conditions, and also parallel parked cars opening their doors or trying to ease out into traffic whenever they can and they don't see you? And if you're someone who's a driver, do you want to go through all of that construction traffic and be stuck waiting? And then when you get to Old Town and try and find a place to park, to go to a restaurant, to go shopping, to take care of your errands, then there's no place to park.
So are you saying you timed the restriping of the parking specifically because these other projects were going to be going on?
No, what I'm saying is we came to a point where we had to decide, do you still want to go forward with the interim striping project, knowing that we're going into the construction or not? And what I'm saying is that would be a justification for why we still went forward. The interim striping project started really in 2014 when the city of Goleta got a grant through Congresswoman Lois Capps, who was responding to some community discussion that began in 2013. Traffic conditions were so unsafe in the city of Goleta in 2013, they actually made a movie about it. Michael Montenegro, a local historian and filmmaker, made a film called Crossing Hollister Avenue that talked about the hundreds of car crashes, the hundreds of
Did you get a cameo? Did you get a cameo in the movie?
I didn't. I was not in the film. Again, this was filmed in 2013. This is a little bit before my time. And the community was really reacting to businesses and residents in Old Town who were saying, hey, we've been waiting for bike lanes for 30 years. We've been waiting for the parking the county took away in the 60s since the 60s. And they wanted those things to come back. And they wanted it to be safer to cross Hollister Avenue. So I think in going back to the interim striping and the timing of it, the city ultimately had an approved project going into design in 2021, early 2022. And then the pandemic hit. We had an engineer leave. A few things happened. The cost of construction went up. And so there were just some delays. There was also the need to do additional outreach.
James, let me just level set. You mentioned there were multiple projects going on. And for folks who don't closely follow Goleta traffic, so you've got the bridge that needs replacement for infrastructure, flooding, and other purposes. You've got the restriping, which you allege is to make things safer. And what other projects are influencing this situation?
So there are 2 significant roundabouts being installed on either side of the Highway 217, which people use to get to the airport or UCSB or Goleta Beach. So 2 roundabouts going in, those will help with circulation. These are projects not just of importance to Goleta, these are regionally significant projects. And then finally, extending Eckwell Street from Kellogg all the way to Fairview to provide an additional east-west route through Old Town for vehicles, because there's a significant industrial area south of Hollister and some residences. So trying to find different ways to relieve the burden from Hollister Avenue. We could have done those projects one at a time, but they would have dragged out over many, many years. The costs would have skyrocketed. So the thinking was do them all at once as one project, Project Connect. Then the interim striping project got added as a change order to that project because we basically ran out of time to do the interim striping before those projects started. So getting back to Nick's question, well, why did you do it? Why didn't you just wait 3 years? Well, a lot of people could get into a bicycle accident in 3 years. A lot of people could
especially
get
if
hit
Nick
in the
is
street
especially
in 3
if
years.
Nick is there.
Yeah, Jerry. Right. Well, I haven't been there on my bike since this has happened. I've ridden through Old Town Goleta many times on my bike.
Josh, you're the only person who's here who born, raised, grew up, and lives in Goleta. What's
Jerry, are you interrupting Nick because he was about to make a point you didn't agree with?
No, we're going to
spirit of honesty and transparency here.
We're going to get back to Nick's vicious attack on pedestrians later, but Josh, what's your take on this whole traffic mess?
Well, I'm trying to keep an open mind because I have a lot of respect for Mr. Kyriaco, but as a user, there are little things that are obvious, and I think maybe they can be worked out operationally. Um, there's more traffic in Old Town Goleta, and I think fewer people are going to Old Town Goleta because of it. I'm going to avoid it because it would take a certain amount of time. Now it's doubled probably, depending on the time of day. I don't like the fact that there's only one lane. If you're parked anywhere on the side streets and you're trying to merge to make a right turn onto that traffic, it's backed up. So before there were two lanes to turn into, and so traffic flowed a lot better. Now you've got to pray someone's going to let you in and make a right turn, which people don't generally want to do when they're already been stuck in traffic. I don't like how people can't make a left turn from those homes, those apartments and residences onto Hollister because even though before it was dangerous or it was hard to do, it was still possible. Now you're asking residents to go around, take different routes, and you know that's that James's background right there by Los Altos. You can't make a left turn there onto Hollister because there's I don't see it in the photo, but there's a planter, there's a divider, it says no left turn. And if there's apartments, there's homes, it's a highly dense neighborhood. And so you're asking those people to take the back roads to get out through a different entrance or go up like by Mandarin and near Fairview. And so those are some impacts. And I do know the diagonal parking, I'll get used to it kind of thing. And I am a very good parallel parker, but the diagonal parking is stressful. And, I have a back end camera, but a lot of cars still don't. And I think that, I'm afraid of hitting a bicyclist because you have to pull up and then back and look. And if you're somebody who's a senior citizen, maybe you're a new driver, it's a very stressful thing. And I know you create more parking spaces by having them come out, but it is kind of a lot of energy and attention in one spot. So I do want to support Goleta and good government and trying to make it safer for everyone. But I do think the first blush attempt at this, there need to be some revisions operationally to make it a little bit safer for everyone involved. And then, the businesses, some of them are complaining they're losing money, and that's a significant issue.
What do you say, James?
Well, there are about 3 or 4 different things there. Let me see if I can take them one at a time. So you talked about the left.
Yeah, we only got 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I'll try not to be super expansive. Sometimes I can get going. So I think that there's a lot of people that are, as Josh was talking about, impacted by the fact that they used to be able to make a left turn on Orange or a couple of the other streets. I think it's important to note Hollister isn't State Street. Hollister has in this area a lot of driveways, and it has a lot of both signalized and unsignalized intersections within a short span. There's something like 13 private driveways in 4 blocks for parking lots. Then you factor in signalized and unsignalized intersections. Now, you brought up Orange Avenue specifically, perhaps because it's in my picture. If I were to show you the chart of accidents at unsignalized intersections, in particular ones impacting bicycles and pedestrians, you would see a chart with Hollister where there'd be a lot of open space where there aren't accidents. And then right when you get to Hollister and Orange, you would see a mess, a different kind of mess on the page, because it'd be, oh, here's a label for a bicycle that got broadsided. Here's a pedestrian that got hit and dragged 50 feet who was walking in the crosswalk. A flashing beacon crosswalk, might I add. The city tried doing this kind of the easier way, like let's add some more crosswalks. Let's try adding some flashing beacon crosswalks. And at the end of the day, the impact of having 2 lanes dedicated to parallel parking and 5 lanes dedicated to vehicle traffic, 71 feet from curb to curb, all dedicated to cars, just wasn't working to make it safe enough for people to cross Hollister Avenue. It's just what we were dealing with. So in terms of, well, it's hard for people to make a left turn on Hollister and Orange, I can appreciate that it would be frustrating that you need to go to Magnolia or you need to go to Fairview, or if you want to go two blocks down to Nectarine, you can do it at a light. I can appreciate that that's an inconvenience. I can appreciate that that's not something that some people would be happy about, although I haven't gotten a lot of those complaints when I've talked to people in the
All right,
community.
we're going to have to move on anyway.
Yeah,
But what
I mean,
about
the bottom line
What
is
about the businesses?
left turn conflicts were one of the major safety concerns. Businesses, for every business I've heard that it says they're losing money, I've also heard from businesses that are thankful to have the parking, will say things like, oh, they'll get used to it with the parking. The other thing I'll say for those businesses is some of the ones that are complaining have private parking lots. There's some of those 13 that have their own driveway that leads to a parking lot, or they're right off a side street where they have a private parking lot. So, I think that different businesses are affected in different ways. The businesses that don't have their own parking lots tend to be more supportive of the project, tend to come out and thank me for doing it, get nervous when they hear reports in the media that people want to put it back the way it was. We had some Old Town business owners that came and spoke at our council meeting a few weeks ago. The next council meeting, we had about 20 people send letters or come and speak saying, please don't get rid of the bike lanes, because they were scared the bike lanes were going to get taken away. When I talk to the businesses, usually the people that like the project aren't super outspoken. The ones that don't like it are very outspoken.
All right. And bottom line, James, in 10 words or less, how long is this going to go on?
Fall of 2026.
Fall of 2026. There you go, Josh.
The bridge will take about a year.
So plenty of time for that series on people complaining about Goleta traffic. All right. before we move on to the city council races in Santa Barbara, I wanted to say have a word about the Goleta races. There's Mayor Paula Peroty's up for re-election against Rich Foster. Council member Stuart Kasdan is up for re-election against Eric Gordon, but there's one District 3 that is open. Josh, give us a real quick state of the race on that one.
So you have two people running for an open seat. You have Ethan Woodall, who is a Goleta guy, born in Goleta, went to Dos Pueblos High School, and he's been a coach, a wrestling coach. He volunteer umpires, and he's somebody who says I'm tired of what City of Goleta is doing with the housing. He's very worked up over Kenwood Village housing development as well as Old Town, and he's running and he's trying to say, hey, I'm not going to raise any money, but I'm going to knock on every door. And he sees himself as somebody who's sort of in touch with kind of like your everyday non-activist, non-political kind of agenda-driven person, just somebody who experiences the world. That being said, he is a controversial person. He does invoke a lot of emotions from people. He said on my show he's been banned from Nextdoor for some of his comments. He posted a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. video, and they said there's no national electioneering. So he's somebody who people have strong opinions about. James knows him better than I do. I had him on my show. And
who's he running against?
He's running against Jennifer Smith, who is a executive director of the Legal Aid Foundation of Santa Barbara County. And she's somebody who's got all the institutional support. And she's somebody who has been wanting to run for years. She's been positioning herself to run for years. She's been in the machine and the process.
Isn't she a planning commissioner for 2 terms?
Yeah, and she's a Goleta planning commissioner, and she's like a prototype of a Santa Barbara South Coast elected official, and she is poised, to do well on election day. She's raising money. She's got a lot of support. She has endorsements from the Goleta City Council members and the establishment. And Ethan is knocking on doors, but he's not, he's doing the kind of a grassroots. He's just hoping that in a small district election, people will know his name. Jennifer Smith moved to this district not too long ago, so he's banking on that. But it's a classic, the Democratic establishment candidate. And Jennifer Smith, in her own right, is very smart, very qualified, cares about these issues against a local person who's trying to buck the system and use Old Town Goleta restriping as sort of one of the key issues, but it's not, they're not representing that district though. But
Yeah. James,
James might have other thoughts.
I'm going to take a wild guess that you've endorsed Jennifer, but that aside, what's the big issue? What's the big issue in this district?
Well, let's see. I think that you've got two people with roots in Goleta. Ethan has obviously lived in the district longer, but Jennifer's lived in Goleta for a number of years, and she's served in Goleta for a number of years too. And I think if I was a voter in that district, what I would be looking at is what are your types of experience? There's lots of different kinds of experience that you need to have an elected official. What is your professional background? What is your day job?
What about the Glen Annie development? Is that a big issue?
I would say that Glen Annie is definitely something that's on people's minds. There's not a lot of ability for a city council member living in that district to influence what happens there because it's county land at the end of the day. It's county property. Josh and Nick, I think, have both written extensively about Glen Annie. But I do think that people that live in that district are going to want someone who's speaking up and standing up for them and advocating for a county process going forward where you're looking at traffic impacts, you're looking at what are the infrastructure issues, how is this going to impact City of Goleta police services, how is this going to impact the library, all those kinds of things. I think Jennifer brings a really
all right. No endorsements. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for that. All right. Speaking of District 3, Santa Barbara's District 3 is where incumbent Oscar Gutierrez being challenged. Nick, you had you moderated a forum for the Independent this week. Did it shed any light on the difference between the two candidates? What was your takeaway?
It's kind of an interesting dichotomy. In some ways, the two candidates share so much alike. They're both children of Mexican immigrants. They both grew up in households where Spanish was the first language. They both are the baby of the family. Neither one of them have a middle name. They got bossed around by their big sister, and they're both big human beings, and they're both really nice. But on the issues, they could not possibly be further apart. They don't agree on pretty much anything. I mean, they both care about the district, but on housing issues, Oscar Gutierrez, who's served now 6.5 years, he is, all about rent control. He's all about rent caps. He's all about, limiting hotel rooms, new hotel development so that whatever gets built will be housing, it'll be maximized. He's all about high inclusionary requirements on housing developments that are approved. And Tony Becerra, who runs a dojo on the west side, very popular dojo, is very busy in the evenings. I mean, it's very well liked. He is very conservative. He supported Trump in 2016. He says he doesn't remember what he did in 2020, and he's more of a Kennedy guy, he said, right now, but now he's a boat without a captain. And he's conservative. And he says, no, I don't believe in rent control. It's going to discourage new development at a time we need new housing. He has arguments against all of it. What he doesn't have is, in my estimation, an alternative set of how do you protect tenants from rent gouging at a time when we're seeing that.
And he himself was evicted.
He himself has been evicted. And Oscar has not been evicted, but his family was before he was a toddler.
Because he lives with his mom and spends his days arguing with his mother about rent control.
Well, he lives with
what I took from your forum.
He lives with his mom, who is a mom and pop landlord. So Oscar lives in a duplex on the west side. Part of that duplex is rented out. And then they have another property, and that's rented out. And Oscar's mom is like, Oscar, what are you doing? This isn't going to help. And they respectfully agree to disagree. A
clear choice. There's a clear choice.
It's nice guys. I mean, Oscar used to practice and study in Tony's dojo. He was a student of Tony's. So they have a familiarity and a friendliness that is really quite sweet, even though there are a few elbows do get thrown. I kind of, think that given that this is a Trump, a Harris year, the Democratic voters are going to come out en masse, and Oscar is a registered Democrat, and Tony is a registered independent. I just that tide is a big tide, and it does not lift all boats equally. And I think Tony is starting late, and he's a newcomer to politics. I think Oscar had a clear advantage.
All right. And then Josh, the city council took action or took an active non-action or a non-active action, did something this week on State Street in any case. And Oscar, I have to say, both at Nick's event and what I took away from your story on State Street, Oscar's kind of getting like kind of a heavy duty mansplaining thing going on that does not remind me of who he used to be. But in any case, what did the council do on State Street this week? And then talk a little bit about what Oscar's role was here.
Okay, so the council did not formally vote, but they directed staff to make a whole bunch of changes on State Street to make it safer for pedestrians. So they're going to have separated bike lanes from the pedestrian area, because the big issue right now is the e-bikes and how fast they go and people feeling uncomfortable walking down the street. And so they're going to do that, create separate lanes. They're going to remove a lot of those barriers, the concrete barriers, the planters. They were also talking about opening up the street from the 1,000, 1,100, and 1,200 blocks to vehicles in one lane, like the 1,300
from Carrillo North.
Yeah, and they were thinking about that, and it looked like they were going to do that, but Mike Jordan decided not to do that, so there weren't enough votes to do that, so it's going to stay.
Mike Jordan, running for re-election, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but against who, Jerry? He's not running shares.
True, fair point.
So as of now, these it's called a short-term plan while the big master plan plays out. They are going to leave things the same way as far as cars go, just on the 1,300 block. And then they're going to focus on these other smaller changes. They're thinking about introducing a golf cart, pedicabs to allow mobility, move people around downtown. They want to add these pedlets, which are sort of extensions of the sidewalks, so that people can have more outdoor dining. So this is Kelly McAdoo, who was on your show and broke the internet with the amount of people who watched it because of your dynamic interview with her. She is trying.
What you haven't watched, let alone read my column about.
I like to wait till after football on Sunday to watch what I really want.
You're saving it for brunch. I know. Go ahead.
She's trying to thread the needle here and address some of the immediate concerns while not trying to get bogged down in the master plan. So she's getting a lot of credit for presenting block by block.
As she should.
Can I jump in? Let me jump. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, I thought you did a great job articulating that. But the word vibe gets used a lot these days with Kamala Harris. But I have to say there has been a massive vibectomy at City Hall with Kelly McAdoo. And I think we've seen inklings of it before, but for the broader public, I think this was really her big coming out moment, where the vibe at these meetings over the State Street Advisory Committee, it's like we're all trapped at a table and nobody can escape, and we're sick to death of each other. And now all of a sudden,
it's like a Samuel Beckett play.
It's like a bad, nasty play. Yeah. And the vibe at the city council chambers was so much more collegial and congenial than it's been on this subject in a long time. And her ability, along with the other staff members, to sort of corral the cats and thread the needle and all those other phrases was really quite deft. Let's use that word, deft.
Yeah. So
And-
Josh, you see that the timing of my piece was, of course, absolutely perfect for the
Yes.
time. Hey, James, how often do you go to State Street? And you agree with me, do you not, that they should have allowed the cars back on from Curio North?
Well, hold on. Let me change my background because you were giving me a bad time about there not being any cars in my background. So there you
There
go.
you go.
Hey!
There's the old town.
And you'll notice there's some classic cars there because you actually had kind of this grassroots group of people
Anyway,
decide
real
to
quick.
take the Milpas cruise and take it out to Old Town Goleta
All right.
because we brought it back. Yes, I've actually gone to State Street a few times recently, and actually I've gone a few times recently. This will drive Randy Rouse a little nuts. I actually went to State Street on purpose on bike. I had a friend visiting from Norway who was staying in Santa Barbara, and he was going to come out to Goleta. And I'm like, no, you know what? I'll meet you. And I took the bike path all the way down Hollister to State Street and all the way down, and had a meal at the cruisery. And I got a chance to experience the promenade. And it's a big change. It's a big change.
It's called the Grand Paseo now.
Grand Paseo.
We
Yes.
moved from the promenade to the Grand Paseo.
Because nobody,
I thought the Grand Paseo
pedestrians
kind of ran
risk their
sideways,
lives.
not just parallel. But yeah, I mean, getting someone like me out on my bike.
Well,
I mean,
you
it's
like it with no
fun.
cars. You
What,
like
say
it.
that again?
You like it with no cars.
I think that what they should be trying to do is if Santa Barbara wants to remain a city that really evokes kind of Andalusian Spain, I think there are worse things in life than trying to make State Street a little bit more like Barcelona. And there are streets in Barcelona that have a real strong pedestrian feel with lots of open space and trees and
But in
beautiful
Barcelona,
landscaping.
excuse me, I'm interrupting, but in Barcelona, aren't the residents there attacking tourists with squirt guns? Saying, get the hell out of here, you're jacking up.
That's a good sign. That's
I
good.
can
for
neither
business.
confirm nor deny the presence of squirt guns on the
I
rum.
told you
Barcelona.
this guy would class up the show. Look at this. We got a Barcelona reference.
But I think the larger
Barcelona,
point
man,
is
they do not want us.
there are pedestrian promenades that are long in Barcelona that work, and there's also areas in Barcelona that are beautiful streets that are primarily pedestrian serving, but then have places for cars also. Not
All right.
necessarily for car
Can I
parking,
just say
but
one
ahead.
thing? Because James is not on the Santa Barbara City Council, so I can speak candidly here about my thoughts. Obviously, there are people in the street. It's fun. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of young people. Obviously, right? There's energy on State Street. But the missing thing that no one is talking about, and this is Randy's point, but because he's isolated, no one takes him seriously anymore on this issue, is housing, right? So you're going to put housing down there, okay? Who's going to shop there? How are we going to actually execute this? This is a very difficult thing. Who is going to pay for this? And the businesses, the property owners, they're the ones who are saying that our businesses are struggling, are suffering. No one's talking about that. What people are talking about is, look, there's a lot of young people dancing in the street. Yes, there are. And that's a great thing. Look to your left. Is anyone shopping there? And so we have two conversations. The Paseo is awesome. Yes, let's make that as vibrant and fun for everybody. But the actual street, which is the corridor that is supposed to support the city financially, that's where the different discussion is happening. Along those lines, to answer your question, Oscar was out of control. All
Wait a
right.
minute, you cut out, Josh, for a second there.
I know I
I
adjusted
think
my.
Oscar cut your mic.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
he's still being
Can you
the
hear me
director.
now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Oscar Gutierrez claimed that he has talked to a majority of employees of businesses on State Street. And he has been saying this over and over and over. Now, I believe that he has
An
talked to.
increasingly heavy hand.
I believe he's talked to many of the businesses. I believe he's made contact with them, but think about how many people you have to talk to if you're talking to a majority of employees on State Street. That's a lot of people. And he did come out of his shell a little bit. He normally is not the most loquacious council member. He did talk this time, and that was really nice to see him expressing himself. However, he did come across a little bit hostile, angry, and as though he knew best
Overbearing.
on the issue.
There is a context. He had just been preceded by Alejandro Gutierrez, who was saying that look around, there's a lot of people who aren't in this room. We're not hearing from people who want cars. They're not here, but we have to imagine that they're here and imagine that they're talking. And so she was very pointed in her remarks, and so
She was saying there were no Hispanic and Latino people.
and she was also saying that it was a bunch of honkies, and which of course that is the default position of a city council meeting, and
Not to mention newsmaker.
and newsmakers. And Oscar was bristling at her bring the car back thing, and so
before I was a Goleta guy, I was a kid from Quiniento Street that lived in a lot of different parts of Santa Barbara. And when I think about my experience growing up in Santa Barbara, I don't have a lot of memories of using State Street, downtown State Street below Carrillo, as a way to get someplace quickly. It was really a road you used if you wanted to cruise. It was a road that you used if you're on foot to shop.
no, James, you're so right. I mean, I did not grow up here, but I've lived here about 40 years now. And the only time I ever got my car on State Street was completely by accident because I wasn't paying attention.
All
No
right.
one in their right mind, Jerry, and present company not accepted,
Well,
drives on State Street.
all right, we got to get out of here, but we'll have the mayor's back. Mayor Randy Rouse is going to be on next week. Mark your calendars, so we'll have the right thinking people a view of this issue. But before we leave, Nick, I have to ask you. We've talked a lot, and I've credited you for doing the Lord's work on this whole what to do with mental health people in the street issue. In all seriousness. And one of the big things has been this 5150, the 72-hour hold, and why Santa Barbara is the only place on earth that doesn't do it. And you have discovered that there is no reason why we don't do it, correct?
Well, yes and no. Here's the deal. So 5150 is what is a term where mental health providers deem you a risk to yourself or to others, or a grave danger. And there's been a understanding for probably 30 years where law enforcement officers in Santa Barbara County did not issue 5150 holds, and in that regard, we are the only state of all 58
Only county
in California where that is the case. The grand jury said, let's look into this. Where did this happen? And what they discovered, there is no there, but it is like a lot of, it's an understanding, an unwritten understanding that has the force of law.
Sort of like the peaceful transfer of power in the United States.
Kind of like the peaceful transfer of power or racism. I don't know. Fill in your blanks. And the problem is and has been, there's only 16 mental health beds in Santa Barbara County, and that's always been way too few, and that's why they haven't done it. What's interesting now is that we discover, A, that there's never been a basis to this understanding that it's written in stone, and B, for the first time in about 40 years, the county is talking seriously about building a new psychiatric health facility, PUP.
Thanks to you. Thanks to
me. I did it single-handedly, I'm sure.
No, I'm serious. Really.
And so they're going to go from 16
dog with a bone
to 24 beds. And that is a huge change, and it'll be better. The other thing that they are now talking about 2017, I think, James, you might have been working at the county at this time. They opened up something called a crisis stabilization unit with 8 beds that it was going to be for people in a huge chair, and then promptly nobody has ever used it since. It has been an utter complete non-entity. And one of the reasons is it has not held people against their will. And that has now changed. So the county has farmed that out to some private contractor. They have changed the rules so that now it can be a 5150 hold facility. So it's a short-term 5150, and it's 8 new beds on the top of what we have now. So
All right.
that has just happened, and that might make a difference.
All right. Very important stuff. And I'm serious when I say your reporting, I think has been determined, if not determinative, decisive in having this all move along this issue. All right, we got to get out of here, or Hap will yell at me. And if you've ever been yelled at by Hap, you know what an ugly experience that can be. James Kyriaco, thank you so much for joining us and taking all the abuse.
I'm trying to see if I can find one more background for you, Jer.
Good luck with that traffic. I'm hoping my Honda runs well enough. I don't have to go back there anytime soon. Josh Molina, Nick Welsh, thank you guys all for coming as ever. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
Thanks so much. I'll see you.